So we're going to give folks just another minute. We know that you're coming in, so we'll give you just one more minute and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, well, welcome to Infusing a Coaching Mindset into Your Work and Life for More Powerful Conversations. We're glad that you're here this afternoon. Our two presenters will be Sue Erickson, who is Library Director at Virginia Wesleyan University, and Kristin Vogel, who is Library Director at St. Norbert College. Just a reminder that we'll be doing Q&A at the end. There'll certainly be time for your questions. We encourage you to actively participate throughout using the chat. And you'll want to remember to change the setting from all panelists to all panelists and attendees so everyone can see your comments. And with that, I'll turn things over to Sue and Kristin.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we want to start by expressing gratitude for the time that we have together for this wonderful, amazing conference experience we've all been having this week. Gratitude is an important part of mindfulness, and mindfulness is key to centering and being grounded and being present. And we'd like to ask you to engage in a short mindfulness activity that will get us all prepared for this session together. So if you will just take 3 deep breaths at your own pace. We recognize that we are all transitioning from a busy day and a busy week where we've been attending the conference all week long, juggling the responsibilities of our jobs at the same time. And so again, I'd like to ask you to just take 3 deep breaths at your own pace to help center yourself and shift your focus into this session, this present moment that we're going to experience together. So let's take those deep breaths together. And now I'm going to read you a poem called Right Here by Dane Anthony. Stop moving. Stand in one place, this place. Breathe slowly. In, then out. Repeat. Repeat again. Let your shoulders sink and relax. Unclench your jaw. Slowly close your eyes. Listen for your heartbeat. Really listen. Feel it pulse in your fingertips. Lessen expectations. Underdo all your efforts. Requisition the time for your soul to catch up. Lean into the wind. Feel it like a tree and test the ground. Learn to trust the resilience. It would be treason to move quickly, left or right, from this place. It is all right to be exactly what you are, who you are, where you are, right here, right now. The reason we wanted to start with a grounding activity is because it really is important for staying in the present moment, and that is key to coaching. It's particularly important for one-on-one coaching conversations and group conversations like this one. But how often do we actually stop and take time to breathe? Did you notice what a difference it made? The well-being focus of my program, my coaching program, has really brought this idea home to me. I've been offering a mindfulness moment to my staff on a daily basis since December, after I had started incorporating mindfulness into my own daily practice once I started my program in the fall. And I can see what a difference it's making to the resilience of each individual and to the resilience that we're able to build and hold as a team. My team is grateful for this time that I give them, and they're grateful that I value their well-being. And this is a way that I can demonstrate that very directly to them on a daily basis. It's really a small effort on my part, but it yields a great deal in caring for the whole person at work. So throughout our presentation, we're going to be using the chat as a way to engage you. And we want to start with that now. Often we will be presenting to you some good coaching questions. So you can tuck those away for later use. And so we want to ask you now if you would share with us in the chat, what's one thing that you are grateful for today? And I will share with you, as I have already, that I'm very grateful for this conference. And I'm also grateful for the partnership that I've had with Kristin in developing this presentation.
I'm grateful for this moment with everyone, for that we have a community surrounding us right now that's over 130 people. We're here in this space together, finding strength together and opportunity. So I'm located in Wisconsin, just adjacent to Green Bay. And St. Norbert College is a liberal arts college founded by Catholic priests from the Norbertine order. We have a land acknowledgement statement. And as I read it, I invite you to hold space for the history of the land where you are. In the spirit of the Norbertine value of stabilitas loci, a deep commitment to the local community, we acknowledge this land as the ancestral home of the Menominee Nation, which holds cultural, historical, and sacred significance to the community. We acknowledge the living history and contributions of the indigenous communities that inhabited this land prior to the establishment of St. Norbert College, as well as the sovereign Native American nations who continue to contribute to the flourishing of our communities. In today's session, we have three things that we're really intending to be on the trajectory to land. First, we want to be able to ensure that all of the participants emerge from this session with an understanding of coaching mindset and how you could adopt it into your management practice and why you would want to do so. So we've already started that, the coaching mindset of being present and setting aside the rest of the day to be right with the person you're with. Second, together with you, we want to consider how a coaching mindset fosters resilience and self-efficacy, particularly in libraries. And third, we hope and plan you'll feel yourself energized, informed, and motivated to bring principles of coaching into your work and your whole lives. So as you can see already, and as you know from the coaching, from the presentation title, engaging around questions is central to coaching. We've already started that, and we're adapting it to the best of our ability in this conference presentation style, excuse me. Throughout the presentation, we'd really encourage you to use a Q&A feature submitting questions, but the cohort is rich that we're with, and so you'll see question prompts from us onto the slides, and beyond that, we'd love for you to be engaging there as a side channel with each other in the chat. So please do that. If you see the upvote feature in Q&A and you see questions appearing there, please resonate with you, please be sure and bring those forward. We're going to monitor chat and Q&A to the best of our ability, largely saving Q&A, but if something fits really well and we can catch it at the moment, we'll do that. So looking forward to all this time together. So one of the things we want to start with is giving you a little bit more of the background for each of Sue and I. And so we want to talk and ground our identity for this session in the coaching programs that we've participated in. So Sue's going to start us off.
So this fall, as I mentioned, I went through the coaching program and I chose the program at George Mason University, Leadership Coaching for Organizational Well-Being, because of its focus on being a strengths-based approach. And George Mason itself is a big StrengthsFinder 2.0 campus. They really embrace that across the whole organization. And I have been facilitating on the side in a consulting manner, mostly staff retreats using StrengthsFinder 2.0 for the last 10 years or so. And so I'm sort of a StrengthsFinder junkie. So when I saw that the Mason program had this focus, I knew that it was the right one for me. And the well-being was a pretty phenomenal thing to be able to latch onto. As you can imagine, during this past year, I had started developing some better wellness habits in the beginning of 2020. And so going into the program and really looking at well-being in terms of mind, body, spirit, really was a wonderful way to expand what I had already started doing in terms of taking better care of myself with nutrition and exercise. So as I mentioned, started meditating, which we did together as a cohort at the beginning of every class. And in fact, reading a poem came out of my class. I stole that idea completely from Dr. Pam, who would read a poem for us at the end of our meditation. And it was such a wonderful experience that I knew that I wanted to share that with you. So that is really that's why I chose the program that I did. How I came to coaching really, again, was through an interest in facilitation. And when we went to working from home in the spring, partway into that, we were told we needed to take 1 day of leave a week. And I used that time very intentionally to reflect on my life, on my passions. I really kept asking myself, what brings you joy? And one of the things that truly brings me joy is the coaching that I get to do with the members of my team. And I thought, I want more of that. And so that is what drew me to coaching. And now Kristin's going to share her path.
So the program that I completed is from Coach Diversity Institute, and it concentrates on coaching competencies with a very intentional and explicit lens on power, privilege, and certainly advocacy, self-advocacy, and empowerment. So for my story of how I ended up with that program, I'll do the very quick review of my career. I had two awesome first managers, a science librarian at Earlham College, Sarah Penhale, when I was an undergrad, and Cass Owens, who was head of public services at the Monroe County Public Library in Bloomington, Indiana at that time. Such phenomenal people at encouraging me and all of my fellow employees to bring our voice in a way that we could tell was distinct and unusual from some of the other department heads or other management approaches that we had experienced elsewhere. So that really was where I imprinted about helping people bring their voice. I landed in managerial roles immediately after grad school, and that thread kept running through. For me, the role of a supervisor to walk alongside a direct report so that they're developing their own career, finding their voice, finding their way in the profession is deeply meaningful. And so I was looking for an educational opportunity that could help me continue to develop this many years into that kind of a role. I'm super grateful that I did that. It was incredibly strange because it was to be an in-person program over multiple visits to Washington, D.C. And just like all of our institutions, they figured out how to pivot to online in the midst of it. But they, just like many of us, found ways to be super successful and even more impactful in things that they were wanting us to learn. So that gives a bit of background on the programs that we were in. And we want to talk first about what is coaching. We certainly all have encountered the word of someone is a coach, whether it's a sports team or a life coach or something along those lines. So we're going to start from the premise of just let's make sure that we're all on the same page with that. So in the words of a client in the coaching kind of environment we're talking about, coaching is transformative, empowering, and deeply affirming. When you opt to work with a coach in a client role, it's an investment in yourself, in your learning, your growth, and whatever dimension of your life you are choosing to focus on. It's a conversation between coach and client or coachee. Language is always a little awkward around those things, that focuses on the client's priority in order to explore and overcome any sort of stuckness or simply to further momentum. The frame of coaching is that people are whole, have deep power, and tremendous possibility. That is a fundamental lens from which coaching happens. Coaching then is a process to affirm and support, even while challenging and questioning. Coaching is not prescriptive. Coaching is not about the coach giving advice or fixing problems. It is a kind of facilitation, as Sue talked about. Coaching is about supporting and challenging learning and growth in a client as they work towards greater self-awareness and self-efficacy in the areas they're interested in. Coaching really helps clients gain clarity about themselves and the world around them. So while you're able to take a look at these kind of example questions, again, seeding that notion that coaching revolves around questions, I want to talk a little bit more about what these questions are intended to do. Questions that a coach will ask are intended to help enable the individual to focus their thoughts, to have, to be able to articulate the meaning of a topic for themselves, to be able to explore ideas and thoughts in a safe and supportive environment that is growth focused. It is action oriented, whether that's a literal action or the mind action of thinking. These questions are designed to enable a person to decide for themselves whatever it is that they're seeking as their next step, I should say. And it's to do it in conjunction with a trained and credentialed partner. Coaches let go of any attachment to outcome, except for the outcome that the client seeks. It isn't about me and my opinion of where a person should go or my interpretation of the experience that a person has just described. It is really what outcome is the client seeking and how can coaching questions help them get there. If you're an internal processor who wants and needs time and space to think, your coach offers that. The pace isn't prescribed, and yet in formal sessions, the coach is trained on the flow in order to ensure that you find insights and takeaways that illuminate your path forward. And for those of us who process externally, a coach can serve as a function of being outside of your thoughts, offering questions to help you create forward momentum. A coach's support for you is resolute. It can take the form of enlarging silence, interrupting a thought, all of which is negotiated and created together with the client. The programs that Sue and I participated in are both accredited by the International Coaching Federation. They have a definition of coaching that you can see there on the screen, and you can also read the language that's created to describe the focus of the programs that each of us were in. So just as there is accreditation for our institutions, and that we know the American Library Association, ACRL, look to articulate ways for us as professionals to hold ourselves to standards, that is the role of the ICF. And so there are coaches who are outside of that. The coaching we're talking about is certainly within that particular framework. It's also helpful to think about what coaching isn't, and putting it in contrast with some other of the helping professions that are all very, very important in society. So you can see here what, of course, has the ability to oversimplify any of these, but that is not our intention. The intention is to try to offer a lens or framework that helps to start to understand nuance of distinction. Coaches certainly refer people to therapists or to consultants when those seem to be the best pathways, or they may ask a client what the client's mentors may have had to say about a particular topic and how that resonated or didn't resonate. So coaching is focusing on uncovering the answers within the client. And it's also really important here to say, coaching is not a passive aggressive communication. It's not a situation where there are leading questions where the coach already knows the right answer. And so as a supervisor, there are many instances where I can and do bring coaching into my work. There are also moments where I have to set it aside. And we'll talk more about when we can bring coaching very easily into major moments in a person's career. And they also happen on a smaller scale. So let's start to dive into how coaching and libraries can intersect. I've already shared coaching and librarianship are both helping professions. Coaching is a person-centered practice. In a way that's very similar, I think, Sue and I are going to make this argument and case for you. You can respond in chat to how much it resonates or doesn't. That coaching and libraries are similar in that in our best self, we are both person-centered. Both of our professions, coaching and librarianship, place a high value on confidentiality, protecting the privacy of the client or the patron. And both coaching and librarianship encourage a client or a patron to question their assumptions and state what facts are known about a situation. So now I'm going to turn it over to Sue to talk more about parallels with reference interviews.
So we wanted to take something that we think most of you are probably familiar with in order to demonstrate that you actually already know how to do a lot of this. So when Kristin and I started talking as we prepared for today's presentation, we started to really see some nice parallels with the reference interview. One of those is that it's all about the client's needs or the patron's needs. You know, when we're working with students in an academic library context, it's really about what the student needs to explore. It's their research topic. We help shape that. We help them gain some perspective around that, but they are driving the need. It's all based on their need. We center on what's helpful to them, and we come at it through their perspective, and again try to open up that perspective to other points of view. So, you know, in the reference interview, in a research consultation, we're always trying to make sure that students are looking at the different perspectives on a topic. And the same is true for coaching. We ask open-ended questions generally to try to help the client look at different perspectives on an issue. Sometimes we get stuck in our own head and in our own emotions around an issue, and it can be helpful to have that that coach alongside to help open up that perspective. Both the reference interview, both research consultations and reference interactions and coaching involve deep listening. And that involves what we talked about earlier, that being very present in the moment with the other person, really listening to what they're saying, listening to the language that they're using, what's the terminology that they're using, and would it be helpful to kind of unpack that? Sometimes I might ask, what do you mean when you use the word whatever? We listen to both what is said and what isn't said. And we also pay attention to body language. In coaching, we refer to this as somatics. There's a whole field of coaching that is all around somatics. What is the body doing? We hold energy in our bodies, and sometimes that can give us clues to what's going on inside emotionally as well. And in both the formal training that many of us have had in the reference interview, we learned that the topic that a patron initially presents is rarely the real topic. There's always some underlying real topic. And so it's peeling off the layers of the onion by asking those open-ended questions to get to what that real topic is. In coaching, it's what the real issue is. Likewise, we are trained in coaching to understand that the initial issue that's presented, when I ask a client, what would you like to explore today? What they initially present is probably not really the issue that we are going to explore. It's probably not what they really need. Again, peeling off those layers of the onion, getting to emotions around the issue to try to uncover what's underneath, what is that deeper layer. We meet the person where they are in both of these contexts, and we try to keep judgment out of the situation. We don't judge paper topics. We help expand them. We don't judge the issues that are raised in a coaching context, but again, we try to expand perspective on them. So we'd like to engage you in the chat. Again, what are some open-ended questions you might use in a management conversation? So we've talked about the reference interview and the use of open-ended questions there. And we've talked about what I call coaching with a capital C, this trained pure coaching. But how might you use open-ended questions in a management conversation, and maybe what examples do you have of those?
And we anticipate there's a lot of this that's already happening from the conversations and sessions throughout the conference. The people who are here are doing rich and really impactful engagement. So just dive in with the kinds of approaches you take.
I can see the numbers going up there. Yeah, nice. I think I understand what that means, but could you please describe it in your own words? That's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
What is really important to you? We ask that a lot. That's a key coaching question. What has made this hard? Nice. So keep those coming in, and I'm just going to move on to talk about the hallmarks of coaching. So as Kristin alluded to earlier, coaching does have pure coaching, the kind of coaching that we are engaging in. It does have a rigorous set of ethics around the privacy, the confidentiality between the coach and the client. So there's a similarity there to the ethics we hold in our field of librarianship. We do not share what is said in a coaching session outside of the coaching session. It's very important to the building of trust that is key to the coaching relationship. It's very client-centered. So we've talked about this, where it all emanates from what the client needs. We refer to something called the agreement. There can be if we have a multi-session engagement with a client, there can be an overarching agreement. Like, I think of it as like a meta agreement for what they want to explore overall in the set of sessions. And then every single session that we have with a client has its own agreement, where we co-create this agreement with the client definitely doing the leading of what they want to explore. And it's co-created because, again, we know that what they initially present probably isn't what they really need to explore. And there are some layers to unpack and open-ended questions to ask around getting to what the agreement really needs to be for the client. And again, as coaches, we don't decide, we don't have any preconceived notions of what that might be. It's really working together with the client to uncover that. Kristin has already mentioned how we both challenge and support the client. So we challenge the assumptions, we challenge them to think about alternative perspectives. One of my favorite coaching questions is, what else could be true? We also support them. So we ask them about what support they have in their lives, what resources they have, but we also support them through empathy. And using, we refer to this as using self as resource. So if I've been through something similar, I might offer that as a point of empathy. But as one of my coach mentors says, I always give the keys back to the client. The client is in the driver's seat. So I might share and then turn it back to the client, usually with a question to prompt them to take the conversation forward. We coach the person, not the problem. This is very challenging for beginner coachers, particularly those of us who are managers and we are used to fixing the problem. It is very tempting to want to jump in there and start fixing the problem. But we really have to focus on the person and ask them the right questions to get them fixing their own problem. It's their problem. And again, we're coaching the person. Curiosity is key in coaching, just as it is in librarianship. I think most of us come to this field because we have a very strong curiosity. Questioning is a very important part of both librarianship and coaching, which is why I think it at least for me, it felt very natural to incorporate open-ended questions as part of the work. I've talked already about deep listening and staying present and the importance of that. That really is one of the hallmarks of coaching. And part of the reason I think my program places such an emphasis on meditation, because it really is a way into developing the habit of presence. One of the things that I think makes coaching very different from some of the other helping fields is that it is future focused and action oriented. So we may ask the person what resources they have. We may ask them what kind of situation have they been in that's similar, and how did they find a way through that? And then we always want to take it forward. How can you use what you learned in that situation that you just told me about to help you in this situation? And what will you do next? So we always want to move them towards the future and towards some kind of action. So how can a coaching mindset foster resilience, self-efficacy, and well-being? We do this a lot through questions about support. As I've just mentioned, what past experience do they have to lean on, and how can they use that now and in the future to help them with similar situations? What resources do they have to draw on? And I like the word resources for its helpful vagueness. It could be people, it could be programs, it could be whatever the client comes up with as what is a resource for them. Questions that challenge their assumptions, their thinking around things, questions that tie the current issue to a bigger picture. So this is particularly useful when we have multi-session engagements with a client. And so we have this bigger picture that we are working through together. How does this thing that we are working on today relate to what we've been talking about all along over our sessions? And then lastly, we also champion the client. We do that through empathy, and we also do that in partnering with them to co-create where the session is going and what actions they may want to take following. So again, here's your opportunity to jump into the chat and respond to this question. What do you feel are the benefits of taking a coaching approach in management conversation? Where do you think you could find a benefit with that? And I see some responses coming in. Building the employee's resilience, absolutely. An empowerment and a sense of agency. They're able to work out their own solutions. Yeah, so it gives some independence. Great. Keep those coming in. So we wanted to give you some possible scenarios for coaching, just so that you can start to see where this could be useful for you, what kinds of circumstances. And these are a few scenarios that we think are really ripe for coaching, particularly conducive to coaching. Anytime someone has new responsibilities, that is a great time to bring coaching into the conversation. So new responsibilities might arise from a promotion or organizational changes that arise from one reason or another. Entry-level staff That's another great time for coaching as they are in the beginning stages of developing their professional identity. Where do they want to take this librarianship thing? What brings them joy? When are the times that they find themselves in flow in their work? That's a good indication that that might be an area that they will want to focus on in the future. Mid-career staff, that's a great time as well. That can be a time of uncertainty. It can be a time of that could be an opportunity for renewal. And I think coaching could particularly support that. So it might be career development. It might also be professional development. So not necessarily a change in the person's career, but some opportunity to develop in some new ways, some new skills, some new focus, some new learning. And then transitions to retirement. Some people are excited to retire and some people find it overwhelming. The perceived loss of professional identity can be overwhelming, particularly for people who really have a lot of their personal identity intertwined with their professional identity. So that can help ease that for people with some coaching before the retirement. And again, we'd like to engage you in the chat. What other scenarios can you imagine using a coaching approach for? Advisees, peers at other institutions. Yes, yes. Kristin and I are definitely going to be coaching each other.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Love seeing your contributions.
Yeah, these are fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, after a setback. Mm-hmm. Sure. And mentoring relationships, definitely. There are ways that's such a great place for coaching questions in that mindset. So we're, as we're getting just this last slide and last question, if you've got things in the Q&A, please be putting those there. And what you've all sort of gotten us to lead up to in a beautifully organic way is also, what are the benefits for the managers to bring coaching into management? One of the impactful pieces of this conference for me is the validation and inspiration and call to action for inclusive workplaces. That's a deeply held value of mine. And I think that the coaching mindset is this benefit of we really want to step away from some of command and control as approaches in management in order to really maximize and have the rich opportunities for everyone that we're working alongside. And embracing the autonomy and professional judgment increases the sense of engagement, not sense of, I mean that in a deep way, the experience of engagement, the experience of contributing in meaningful ways, and the entire organization is able to do much more and in ways that are much better and more healthy for all of us. We end up having so many conversations around well-being in the profession. In the opening keynote about low morale, just absolutely amazing kinds of things, and the intersections with how important as managers our role is in the lives of those that we work with, to me puts a very strong exclamation point on how important coaching can be in those places. So these are all some of the benefits that coaching does. It takes burden. We don't all have all of the answers. We should be able to reframe so that we take that pressure off, because we're with a bunch of phenomenal colleagues. And let's make sure that wherever the ideas come from, they're supported and developed. So we want to make sure that you've got a chance to have one more very powerful coaching question. And so we're going to pop that up there. And have you answer in the chat, getting engagement going there. And we've got a couple things maybe starting to show up in Q&A. Super excited about that. And one of the first things I want to answer or address is when we're talking about deep listening and about questions, one thing that I learned that may be a helpful takeaway hint that would give you something to consider is, I was trained in academic writing to never use the words of the author. I was trained to translate the words of the author into my own language. And coaching pushes back very hard against that, because the person has said what they mean. And if as a coach, you change the language, it then causes any number of ripple effects. One being they have to double check that you did understand. Checking for your understanding is important, but it's their understanding that is central. So taking a moment as a takeaway, and in some of the next conversations you have in the next week, think about experimenting with using their language back in an affirmative way in order to see what response you get, in comparison to if you've had, like me, a past practice of thinking it was better to not exactly reflect back, and that if I could say it in a slightly different way, it showed that I really understood. But from empathy, coaching clients say over and over, oh, you used the same language, that I felt heard. And as Sue said, coaches have themselves as the first client. We must go through the process of being coached in order to do coaching, to be a coach, to partner with someone as a client. And so think about those places in your world where you can either have formal or informal coaching that helps you be in that other kind of seat. So let me pause and Sue, you see anything in Q&A or in chat?
Well, I just want to add on to what you just said. I want to plus one what you said about using the other person's words. And it's not only empowering to them to hear their words come back to them, but sometimes they didn't even realize that they used that word. Or maybe they used the same word 3 times, which says to me as the coach, that's really important. And I might say, you just said the word burned out, or the phrase burned out 3 times. What's going on? And they say, oh, wow, I did? Oh, I had no idea. You know, when we're in our heads, you know, talking through, we don't always know what's coming out of our mouth. We're not really able to listen at the same time as we're speaking. And so to have the coach mirror that back sometimes can be a surprise. And sometimes it can also be very affirming. And sometimes it's both. So do take that. I think that's a really excellent point. I'm seeing a lot about, you know, asking more questions in those management conversations, not feeling like you have to solve all the problems, and empowering people to find their own solutions. I think that's a great takeaway.
So in Q&A, there's a great question that we'll answer live here about the instinct we may have from our literal training as managers about jumping into brainstorming with people where we do idea generation on their behalf, or we are offering suggestions because we're doing helpful problem solving. And the question, as I understand it, it says, even with the practice of the mindfulness and the other kinds of resources, how difficult do Sue and I find to stop doing that sort of a thing? How do you stop blurting something out? Sue and I were debriefing on one of the sessions about when you're interpreted to be giving feedback as a manager when that wasn't what you thought you were doing. Definitely very real. So my short answer is I try to approach my work even 30 years in as a manager as a novice. I try to approach it with the I'm always learning. So with a kind of humility, and if I'm talking too long, like right now, I try to remind myself, I bet I'm not adding enough value and the other person would be able to do more. So let's hear from them.
Yeah, I think I am always reminding myself in the coaching conversations not to get caught up in the story. It's not about the story. It's not about the problem. You know, I've had clients who have been in other fields and they've started talking about pretty technical things that I don't understand. And as a beginner coach, which I am absolutely still a beginner, and to Kristin's point, I hope I always will still feel a beginner, because when you don't, you might stop learning and you might get sloppy. But sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought because I was not present in the moment. So not getting hung up on the story. It's not about the story. I don't need to understand the details. They need to understand the details, but I don't. I need to help them figure out what's underneath that, what's going on. And it's usually more about something emotional, something about how they're feeling about the situation. It's not the technical details that I'm coaching. It's the person and how they're coming to this and how they are working through it. So, you know, I sort of have this little voice in my head running all the time, I think, that says, you know, coach the person. And that helps keep me out of that trouble a little bit, which isn't to say that I don't have moments where I go, oh, I want to help you fix that problem.
So we've got another question in the Q&A about having tips about where and how to go about finding a coach that's external to the organization. So it's becoming much more common that HR can have a resource list if the person is interested in getting a referral to something through there. That, of course, dependent upon your local HR department. There is a growing presence in HR departments for organizational and personal professional development opportunities. So it may be that even if it's not a known benefit, it's on their radar. And so making sure that you at least ask so that your organization is getting that raised as something that's perceived as an important way. And then ICF has a directory for searching for the credentialed coaches. And so that's a possibility. It has a number of different ways to sort of slice and dice faceted searching to help get a sense. There are a number of coaches who have library backgrounds like Sue, myself. There are a number of other people who've participated in the conference presenting, as well as an attendee who from chat we can tell or bios we can tell are coaches as well. So starting to do more networking in the profession and talking to other people about, have they done coaching, have they been a client in a coaching situation, and certainly both Sue and I are happy to help make referrals and help get people connected to Yeah. Oh, excellent. Yes. Coactive Training Institute is another, sort of powerhouse kind of a place that also has a directory. See that in chat from Stephanie. Thank you.
So we have another question that's come in. Is using an internal, meaning within libraries, coach who is currently in a position of power a good idea? I think I would need to know a little more to answer that question. Kristin, if you feel differently, jump in, but I think as a coach, I think you want the coach to have some objectivity. But if it's a coach who is trained in being a coach, there shouldn't be power issues in the coaching relationship. The coach is there to support the client and challenge the client, but in a way that is providing support. So challenge is a form of support. But if it's a trained coach, if it's a certified coach, they should know what they're doing, and they should leave any power dynamic outside of the room. Does that resonate with you, Kristin?
Yeah, my head's like bobblehead doll at the moment.
Yeah.
Totally. Right. So it's very common for people who are seeking a coach to look for someone who has whatever their sense of credibility is for being able to know minefields in the topic at hand. So there are coaches who concentrate on grief. There are coaches who concentrate on finances. There are coaches who concentrate on any sort of kind of focused area, career development pieces. So depending on what you're seeking, any coach who's got the ICF certification has core competencies to be a generalist to work in any particular area. If you think the minefields that you're trying to process and work through have some particular idiosyncrasy, that would influence your decision about sort of if you need and want to look for someone who, for example, has worked in libraries. If that somehow feels very central, otherwise know that the core competencies are there, and power should not be at all relevant. And it would be a red flag if you were seeking a coach who had positional power that you were somehow trying to be in relationship with, right? Because the intention is that you're in power, not that their power is in play. Interesting question. Thank you.
Very, very. I hope we unpacked that in a way that helps with what the intent of the question was. And if not, let us know.
And phenomenal. Thank you, Rebecca, for another way to connect with coaches.
So we're just about at time. So I want to thank Kristin and Sue for all the fantastic information they've shared with us today about coaching. And just a reminder, we've got some resources coming up on the screen here. That's great. This session was recorded, so if you'd like to go back and dig back into some of the content, you'll certainly be able to do that. And of course, here's Sue and Kristin's contact information as well. So many thanks to Kristin and Sue.
Thank you all. This has been a rich conversation, and looking forward to the keynote now.
Thank you so much.